slides. Excellent. So thank you everyone for coming. We realize that as this process has been happening and so new to all of us, we've had to really kind of step back and formulate and frame out some of the lingering questions about how to determine how much educational programming, preschool educational programming specifically, is required. And so today's presentation is hopefully going to be able to support people in understanding what those conversations should look like and what those offerings should be. So we're going to talk about access to the general education setting, the service allocation in the least restrictive environment, and also the individual education plan versus the individual service plan, and how we're going to be using that as we move forward in this work.
Okay, I'm thinking that everyone here has probably seen the guidance. And if you've taken a look at it, you will see that we were attempting to clarify provision of FAPE in public schools for preschool age children with disabilities. And so we offered information about what the FAPE offer for school districts would be with and without universal public pre-K, what those minimum hours of general education in public pre-K programming would be, or in the mixed delivery system, what LRE placement and the SAU funding responsibilities within that mixed delivery system would be, what are the conditions under which a parental placement would occur, and then just reinforcing when we're talking about a mixed delivery system, that includes our public pre-K system. Often we say, public pre-K and the mixed delivery system, but we want to just restate here that the mixed delivery system includes early care and education programs, those partnerships in the community, and our public preschool settings. Also in the guidance, we provided some definitions so that we were all grounded in using the same language. Some of the new terms that may not be familiar to folks, as you may not have joined. One of our cohorts is, we often talk about the quality rating and improvement system, which we talk about as what rating a childcare program in the community might have. And that is a star system. So you might hear us talk about star 2 or star 3. That's part of that quality rating and improvement system. Once again, a term that might be new to folks is that mixed delivery system. And when we talk about that, it includes our public pre-K and then the ISP as in light to or in reference to early childhood special education.
All right, to understand how we're going to be looking at LRE and the FAPE offer, we have to get really clear in distinguishing between SAUs without universal pre-K programming and SAUs with universal pre-K programming. So we want to also set the stage for what is based on, again, the only document we have about preschool programming, as you all know, is Chapter 124. So we are tasked to look at that guidance and kind of clearly identify the difference between universal and non-universal pre-K SAUs. So next slide, please. Mm-hmm. So here are the standard features that is important for all of you to know about both pre-K with, if an SAU has a universal or doesn't have universal pre-K. These things are standard features of both, right? There's instructional time for public pre-K. It's a minimum of 10 hours a week. Many people know that, they've heard that, they've seen that, and that's consistently known kind of across our state. The instructional time does not include rest time. That might be more unfamiliar, and has to be for 35 weeks. public pre-K programs operate within the 175 school days that the school administrative unit has designated as instructional time, but do not have to use all the days, which allows flexibility as to the number of days per week that you offer the programming. And then general education class composition consists of at least 50% of the children in the non-disabled that are non-disabled. So these are general features of preschool programming, educational programming that are consistent across whatever mechanism you're using to provide pre-K that are nuanced and different from how we provide school age services. So we want to make sure you understand that.
So we also want to review what we mean or define what we mean when we're talking about SAUs with and without preschool programming. So SAUs without universal pre-K programming have a limited number of pre-K seats. They typically have some sort of enrollment procedure that they might do a lottery, they might do first come, first serve, they might have a weighted mechanism that to ensure that the composition of students mirrors their own public school composition, but there isn't enough seats in their public pre-K programs to provide a space for every eligible four-year-old in their community. SAUs without universal pre-K, once again, they're part of that mixed delivery system, and they could be partnering with their community programs. And based on that QRIS standard, which we have set at 3 stars. So Head Start is a partner in the community that we know about, licensed childcare programs, and then once again, their own internal public pre-K seats in their classrooms, but also some school districts have community partnerships that are considered public pre-K programs. Once again, those offerings are composed of 50% or more of non-disabled peers in alignment with Chapter 124. And then we've established the minimum educational hours. For 4-year-olds, it is 10 hours, and for 3-year-olds, it is 6 hours. And then for SAUs with universal pre-K programming, that's when a school district is considered to offer public pre-K universally. And that is for all 4-year-old children. And it is a 4-year-old child is defined in Chapter 124 as a child that must be 4 years old on or before October 15th of that school year. And now that we are transitioning to early childhood special education, all 3-year-old children who are eligible for special education, and that is part of our guidance. And so the FAPE offer would reflect the general education program available to non-disabled peers. So once again, access to that general education curriculum that's in alignment with Chapter 124 learning standards for 4-year-olds, the general education classroom composition of 50% non-disabled peers. And once again, they're could be collaborating with the mixed delivery system. Those are those community partners to support programming.
Sandy, can I interrupt and add something here?
Yes.
I just want to say that in some cases in the next 2 years, Cohort 3 will be, and some in Cohort 2 have opted to only work with 4-year-olds. So I just want to clarify for those who are only working with 4-year-olds, the universal pre-K standard would only be applied to 4-year-olds. So it wouldn't include those 3-year-olds. I just want to make that distinction.
Yes, thank you. So considerations for SAUs and the IEP teams is always looking at that least restrictive environment for students, early childhood special education students. As we know, to the maximum extent possible, children with disabilities are educated alongside their typical peers. These are all of these programs that we've been mentioning today. And then placement in separate classes is only allowed if the disability is to the extent that the child cannot be educated within a regular education program. Once again, those early care and education programs we've been talking about. And then the services on the IEP, once again, we're documenting the frequency, intensity, and duration of those special education and related services, and the pre-K programming that is required to implement the IEP. We've established these required hours, 6 for 3-year-olds, 10 for 4-year-olds, may be rebutted by the IEP team. And that is when you're making data-based decisions about the needs of that child and having a recommendation from a qualified evaluator or documentation that shows that the supports that have been attempted were not working and rejected by the IEP team. And the decision is made to offer a different offer of FAPE than the minimum 6 hours or 10 hours.
All right, parental placement is challenging to define in this age group. So we've attempted to kind of put some parameters on parental placements so that you can understand how to navigate that. So obviously in this age range, there's, a lot of decision making and a lot of parental involvement in how those services are going to be delivered. And they play an important role. They always play an important role, but in this age, it's how do I want to say this? They're more involved in the decision of how and where to send their child because, again, sometimes we don't have that universal pre-K offering in an SAU. So parental placement occurs when parent enrolls a child in the program outside of the SAU's FAPE offer mixed delivery structure. So if the SAU offered FAPE, the parent may decline the FAPE offer made by the SAU for a general education program or a FAPE offer in a partnership location. In other words, you're an SAU, these are the seats that you have spread across the SAU that you think will be a good match for this child, and the parent declines that offer. So the third criteria is if a parent enrolls the child in a private program that does not meet the star 3 quality rating criteria, it is outside the catchment area, or it will, the private entity will not contract or collaborate with the SAU. Next slide. So in terms of our parental placement students, in this case, the SAU must conduct child find activities, convene IEP meetings, create individual service plans, review the IESP at least annually, reevaluate to determine eligibility at least every 3 years, and implement an ISP with meaningful consultation. So not different than the private school criteria that are in our community now for school-aged. The SAU is not required to pay tuition or childcare costs, to provide staff to the parent-selected site, to provide transportation, or to provide specially designed instruction and related services when it meets that criteria. I think next slide. And that is our presentation.
That is it.
Wow, we got through that quickly.
We did. I'm sure we have questions though.
Yeah, so if you could take a moment to let us know if there's anything that needs clarifying here, or so this would, thank you for your question, Kim. This would apply to parental. So the difference in parental placement here is that it's the people who live in your community. In school aged, we're used to taking care of all of the private schools that within our catchment area. But this is different because now you are looking at the child who lives in your community, who might be attending a program outside of your community. So it could be a parental placement in your district, in your catchment area. So in other words, it could be a program that they want to send their child to that doesn't meet our 3-star rating criteria. And then you would indicate to the parent that that would be a parental placement in that case. I hope that's clear.
Yep, it is. Thank you.
Julie and then Barb.
Thanks, Erin. I'm going to do my best to articulate this, but on the guidance that you sent out, the FAPE document in preparation for today's meeting, so I'm looking at section 2, paragraph 3. And I just am hoping for some clarification to see if I'm reading it correctly. So it talks about if the SAU cannot guarantee a public pre-K, so I'm assuming that's like lottery or universal, we have to provide general ed pre-K access through either a partnership with an SAU or a mixed delivery setting. So if I flush that out, I'm thinking about, like, we've met several times with the person in York and the model that she's been doing, and all the learnings that we've done with her. And some of that has been like, if I've understood correctly, some of that's been with 3-year-olds coming. I'm going to use the term like a drive-by model. That's probably not correct, but bear with me for a picture. Like the littles, like the 3-year-olds have come on campus. The parents have come for a related service like speech, and then they've left. So, and there was never in her presentations to us any sort of example of her then paying a provider in the community for the general ed component of that. Am I reading correctly that the updated guidance is now they're driving by to her to get the related service? I'm using her as an example, but like to us to get the related service in that example, and then she's paying a provider for the general ed seat for the rest of the day?
Not for the rest of the day.
Or for the
But
6 hour, or for the 6 hours, if
6 to
that's the
10 hours.
guide.
Yeah. So this is slightly different, Julie, than how previously we have been addressing this, because we have been not clear prior. And again, this is part of the iterative process of
Right.
doing this work.
Yeah.
And so, yes, and we are going to do some more work after this initial understanding of kind of looking at how CDS has done those partnerships. Again, you would be looking for, does this provider contract with you? Are they 3-star quality rating? And then, yes, there would be some educational hours associated with the services being provided.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I was reading that properly because that's how I was reading it, but it just did seem like it was an iteration that was different than what I was hearing from cohort 1 and 2. And I wanted to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding that as I'm moving forward with my planning and preparation. So I am reading that correctly.
And can I share on that as well?
Thanks.
That this is something that we've been working on, both cohort 1 and 2, having a better understanding of what FAPE is. It is the special education services and the general education counterpart to that. And so part of this is we knew we needed to have this guidance as well to help, but a lot of our PD that we've been providing has been around how to look at that through the lens of the IEPT meeting, and what does that look like when you're also trying to ensure that you have enough seats for the children with the students with IEPs in this age group as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. And is that, and maybe this is part of what's going to be the 4 o'clock conversation, but is that part of the 100% reimbursement then?
The paying for those general education
Seats.
hours?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Barb, I know you had your hand up next, so I just want to make sure you didn't have anything to add.
No, I was going to talk about proportionate share under IDA, but I don't want to confuse the conversation anymore right at this moment. So
I think that's wise. We'll have that conversation at another time. Yeah, thank you.
Lori?
My question was the exact same one about section 2. If you don't mind, just being a little patient. So if we have no regular ed programming for 3-year-olds in our district, what would FAPE look like? Would they have to be hooked up with a community partner daycare? Or like, I guess we're struggling with how that would look. If we were thinking, like, can they just come into the school for speech, but we don't have a regular ed program, and then they go home? Or do we have to create something for them to have a regular ed experience?
Yeah, most schools
That's
are embedding the 3-year-olds in their 4-year-old classrooms, or they're using their community partners where
Mm.
3-year-olds naturally would attend.
so they have this, so they're saving seats for 3-year-olds out of their 16.
Not necessarily. I
Okay.
would suggest, Lori, if
Yeah.
you're in the position that you're in and you're trying to figure out a problem like that's that
But
complex, to meet with this team, to kind of problem
Mhm.
solve around that, because there's lots of different things you can do. Lots of
Yeah.
different things you can do.
But there is, so, and it says in the parentheses that that's DOE guidance. So chapter 124 doesn't say that you have to provide 6 hours of regular ed to 3-year-olds.
Chapter 124 doesn't yet include 3-year-olds in it.
Okay.
So we know that we have a requirement for special education in 3-year-olds, which
Mhm.
is why this is unprecedented. It's not
Right.
yet codified in anything. So, and there's lots of different ways that folks are providing those services. Some of the ways is, pushing in for that couple of hours 3 times a week or whatever it is to kind
Mhm.
of get some educational programming. And remember that, those are IEP driven decisions. So
Yeah.
just like we know, and it's a little bit different in this age group, but just so we know, some children might need more programming, some children, whatever they need, we're going to be using the IEP team and the parent input to determine what that would look like.
Okay. Thank you.
Aaron, just to follow up with what Lori just said, the 6 and 9 hour provision has to do with specially designed instruction, not regular instruction.
But Lou, in this case, we're defining it that way.
Oh, it's both. Okay.
No, it's just general ed. The 6 and 10 is just general education. The special education is within the provision of providing, of accessing that.
Got it.
We do have some questions in the chat I want to make sure we get to. Lisa Sear asked, when we do evaluations for students in an outside placement, do we need written parent permission to send evaluations to the school? Lisa, I don't know if you want to unmute, but is that, are you're the SAU doing the evaluations?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, you wouldn't need, if you have a contract with that school and you are placing the child there, they should have access to the student's records.
So what if it's
As-
if it's a Head Start, so that's their gen ed setting, and we go in and do an evaluation for, a developmental evaluation, we just had one, and an OT evaluation. Do we just forward those along to the school, or is that something we need to get parent permission in order to do?
I think at this point, Lisa, we're going to get back to you on that. I think sharing the evaluation with the parent, who can then share it with whom they like, and sharing it with the IEP team is very clear for me. Sending it to parentally placed settings or providers that you may not have a contract with is different. So I think we have to discuss that internally. And thank you for bringing that question to us.
Okay, another question, follow up to the parental placed. What if the parent chooses a school in a town they work in and not live in?
Again, you don't have to provide special education services outside your catchment area, and that meets the criteria of parental placement.
If you're able to provide it within your.
If you're able
Yeah.
to provide it within your SAU.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay, so Heidi said, I'm assuming this does not include a situation where a parent declines the FAPE offer and is homeschooling.
When parents, now there's no really homeschooling in this age group, right? Because there's not compulsory attendance and you don't have to register that
For
with the state.
4-year-olds, you
For
can.
4-year-olds, for 4-year-olds you can, for 3-year-olds you can. But yeah, homeschooling is declining the FAPE offer.
Okay.
So,
And
can I
Lori, oh, sorry, go ahead, Heidi.
It's just Heidi. I just want to clarify. So I guess I'm getting a little hung up on there's no homeschooling for the 3-year-old. I thought that in order for us to provide services to a 3-year-old, they do in fact need to register with our school district.
That's correct.
Okay, so if a parent's refusing to register and therefore we're not providing anything, correct?
Yeah, you would be doing child find, and you
Mhm.
might say to the parent, this is what we would recommend and offer, and here's our IEP that stands ready, and they may elect not to take part in that.
Okay, that's the whole process we did do. We developed the whole IEP, and the parent was kind of picking and choosing what she wanted for services from the FAPE offer, which I had been given guidance that I could either stand firm in that wasn't a menu, or I could compromise for this first year and sort of say, while we're in development, which is what I did choose to do. But the parent then said, I don't want any part of it. So,
So thank you for bringing that up, because there are some SAUs in cohort 1 and cohort 2 that are recommending educational placements with services, and then navigating that conversation when the parent says, I'll drop my child off for speech, but I don't want them to attend the educational programming. I just want you to know that we are developing further guidance on that. It is kind of something that we have to review with our AAG to kind of make sure that it's legally stands up, because it is, I wouldn't want to say it's like, it's a little bit different than what we know in school is this is what we're offering and you can avail yourself of it, or you cannot. You can go and homeschool or do these other different things. So I would just say, Heidi, that what you're doing is correct. And we are looking right now and developing some like more clear guidance about what those conversations might look like at your IP team, what you could or would or shouldn't offer, and how to document that so you're in a kind of a legally sound place.
okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we answered Lori's question, so I'll move on to the next one. Kim Bennett, even if there's a superintendent's agreement. So Kim, do you want to come off mic or come on mic and clarify what that is?
So if they're in a district that isn't where they live and it's where the parent works, that district would become responsible for serving that child.
If there's a superintendent's agreement,
Okay.
yes.
Yep. So the same thing we do now.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Superintendent's agreements are a kind of another an alternate option, and not really discussed here, but yeah, it's that kind of same situation. Sorry, I think I just confused everybody there. But
Okay.
Kim, what is going on here, so that's good. If we offer a spot within our public pre-K program and the parent rejects that offer to keep child in their early child care setting, are we allowed to still offer services if we have the capacity to do that in that setting? If that is the case, do we have to pay for the child care? That is a great question, Nicole. I think we have to tease that out a bit, and get back to you on that, just so that we have something consistent that we can share with everyone. And then I have a student that came from a district that doesn't have an early childhood education program. CDS is going to send them to an outside special education program. We hope to have them participate in our ECE program 100% of the time and move them into the gen ed as they can safely participate. This time is no gen ed per IEP decision. I'm assuming this is okay, or maybe I shouldn't even ask. Lisa, you should ask. So we're talking about how Chapter 124 defines general education setting. That does not mean you can't have a self-contained special education setting. We're just defining what the general education classroom is, because again, it might look different than you have or maybe not, but mostly in general education settings in school age, we don't really have this kind of more than half the kids have to be non-disabled children. So that is, I hope that clarifies. We're just defining the general education component. There could be special education programming that's separate from the general education programming.
That is the last question in the chat.
So
Are
can
there
I,
any, go right ahead.
Sorry, this is Katie. So can that just struck me, sorry. So can a special purpose program still be a public pre-K program if there's that Chapter 124 requirement of no more than 50%?
Yes, because it's offered by the public school and we
Yeah.
have day treatment level programming in our public schools. So it is a public school program and it's 100% self-contained. So yeah, it's public school day treatment level
Spe-
support.
Special education programming versus public pre-K programming, right? Okay.
And
Thank you.
I think there are people who are either collaborating with special purpose preschools or private schools to bring in programming into their SAUs. And there's some that are creating that programming themselves. And there's also our special purpose preschool partners who can provide that level of programming.
Hey, Aaron, I have a question kind of along those lines. So we've been working with the Midcoast CDS preschool to place some of our 3-year-olds. I'm just wondering, I guess, what that placement is considered, because definitely the classrooms are less than 50% regular ed. So I guess I'm figuring out sort of how to document that on the IEP, what would be appropriate.
What's the setting? Yeah. You know, CDS has historically had challenges attracting general education students to their programming. However,
Yeah.
they do have general education students in their programming. And also, I'll remind people that that special education isn't a curriculum. All special education programming is offered to access general education curriculum. So I think you would really kind of try to delineate what the need is on the IEP. And if they don't need a self-contained setting, even though that mix is potentially slightly off, I think that, again, there is some interaction with general education peers. And so I would think, kind of thinking about that in the IEP team, like what would that look like in 4th grade? Would they enter into a general education program? Would they enter into, I know you guys have self-contained programming. How would that look? But I would kind of just try to articulate it that way, Kate.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So it looks like we have clearly and successfully articulated this new information. I know there was a written document that was made available to you. I just want to remind people that, yeah, we can put the link, Deb Murphy, Jennifer, if you can put the link for the 4 o'clock meeting in the chat here. I just want to remind people that this work is iterative. And so we are going to send out another copy. We're going to be dating these copies, by the way, so we can say, when you're looking at this guidance, look at the guidance from 12/17/2025. So you know that, we sometimes refine language, but this is kind of, again, we're contemplating the importance of providing general education to children in this age group and the challenge of having that understanding what that is all over the map in terms of what people are providing and childcare versus education and all of those different kinds of challenging things, conversations that are nuanced and different from how we have been thinking about public school all these years. So just understand that there's going to be more work on this, that we are working to get these codified in Muser and in Chapter 124, and that this is our guidance currently for how we're proceeding with this age group. And we just want to kind of help people navigate that conversation a little bit more clearly. So we hope that this has done that. There will be a small update to the guidance that was sent on Friday, last Friday, and we will get that to you.
And just a quick clarification, I'm seeing the question about the purpose of the office hours. It's an open office hours for cohort 3, but there is a kind of a fiscal focus. Is that fair to say? Not necessarily, Sandy?
Could be. Yes. Bring any and all questions.
All right, if there is no further questions, we will let you go.
Thank you.
Bye.